tagad tātad pieslēgsimies Zviedrijai, un ar zviedru violnieku mūs iepazīstinās Ilmārs Pumpurs no biedrības Skaņu māja.
Ir laiks nākamajam runātājam, zviedru senās mūzikas un tradicionālās vioļu spēles speciālistam Macam Edenam no Zviedrijas. Un Latvijas interesantiem viņš jau ir pazīstams, jo jau šī gada pavasarī viņš viesojās Rīgā ar violas spēles demonstrējumiem, meistarklasēm. Un tas arī mums deva iespēju iepazīties un vienoties, ka arī šajā Dzīvās mūzikas festivālā viņš pastāstīs par Zviedrijas violes spēles īpatnībām. Hey, Mats!
Hello! And I'm very happy to be invited to this festival. And I will talk about a bit on my music. And I grew up in a family with musicians. My stepfather, he was a fiddle player, and so I was interested to play the music and started also to learn how to play the violin, but not from him, the one that was other teacher. Anyway, but the music from his generation was a bit similar from what we heard in the first performance, the first lecture here today with Gaila. For example, I wrote down the night from the recording from 1976, the Lorca band, with polkas and two violin, one violin play accompaniment and another violin maybe play a more bass line or something like that. So this music was very sort of similar, polka, mazurka, waltz. And we also have the older music that we find in the collections, in the transcription and also the written repertoires. And me and my friends, we were a bit puzzled how to make out of this kind of music, because we didn't have the clue how to play the music and the rhythm and all the elements in the music, intonation, sound, how did it sound, and so on. So there was some musicians that one generation before me that find out and also inspired us a lot, not even to looking to the kind of repertoire, but also looking at the instrument itself and find out if you can use different strings, for example, and also the indication of what you also talk about. I find it similar with the presentation as well, that you have a drone style, like in I think Helen said this about the Estonian music, that the musicians that there was barely no position playing and no vibrato, but you use it as an instrument for dancing, and the bow structure is very important, and yeah. So I think I will start sharing a screen here and see if that works. So, yes. So, older folk music. So, and I write time frame around 1800 to 1900. That's maybe, I will try to explain that. So, you have a kind of two different repertoires, mainly when you come to the dance music, and that doesn't really it's connected to places more from which time this music is. And one of these repertoires you find from the south to the north in Sweden, they are musicians that could write down music and also have a knowledge about writing music, and also get information from other fiddle players or musicians of the newest repertoire. And I would just play a short example of this. I stop sharing now. So this is a tune from around the end of the 18th century, from 1780 something, I think. And the story behind this was there was a couple in 1920s that had bought a house, and they had to make some big restoration because it was not in good shape. So, and they find, in the old houses, to cover the walls, you could have clay, you have paper, you could do nice newspaper, whatever, to prevent the cold to get in. So they found a lot of papers, but they looked like this, it was music paper. And they saw that it was written, and it looks very old. So they took it to the museums, and the museum said, "Oh, this is very old music. It's from the 1700s, from the 18th century." And it was a lot of dance music, popular dance music, that polonaise, anglaise, quadrilles. So here is a polonaise from that area, from that collection. And you can see this is more continental music. Could be French, could be German, could be, And this kind of music you find from the south and the north. And where you can have fiddle players that also work in the church, playing music in the church, and was also obliged to provide music for funerals, weddings, and so on. So they were rather skilled musicians. And also one of the most popular dance music from that time was composed by a German violinist. He was employed in the opera orchestra in Stockholm, and he composed a lot of tunes that was very popular. Also, he composed also violin concertos and such. That one part of the story. Another part of the repertoire is the music where you didn't have these kind of musicians that could read music, or it's another part of life. So I will show you. So this is when the English stopped working in my head. My translator is a bit tired. So anyway, due to many different circumstances, this kind of what we call older folk music, that we find that they have also the similarities with other music you have presented today. It's a music that could fit to bagpipe or other older instruments, as well as the violin. They have a limited range, and it also sort of connected to the way people lived. And during the 19th century, the life was a big change in Sweden, to the pre-industrial society. Also, that in the beginning of the 19th century, the government decided that we have to change the way how to grow vegetable, how to have farms, how to deal with cultivating. So in the old villages, one farmer didn't own a specific part of land. He owned many parts of the land that the village had. So he couldn't really go out and say, "I go out to work on my part of the land," because they have to be sort of they have to organize this, how to work on the fields, because the field was put out in small, like a big cake, And this was, of course, a way of living that has been for centuries, but it's also very impractical. So the governments decided that this had to end. So they took, for example, the farmer A had this amount of land, and then put it together in one block. And what happened that the villages have to disappear, So they sort of destroy a lot of villages, and in some parts there was actually this resistance against this. Anyway, but this is one part that changes the music, and also how the music went from one generation to another. So, and one of my friends, he wrote that the big change come in 1850. I don't know, but after 1850, this is where the pre-industrial culture comes in, and also you have the new music coming in, the polka, the waltz, and then later on also a different style of playing, and also the accordions and so on. So what is this? So, for example, these two guys you see here, Anders Rosén and Karl Almröv, they did in the 1970s a great impact on my generation, because they come out with a solution on how to play these older tunes that we didn't know how to do it, and also inspired me and my friends Leif Stinnerbom and Inge Stinnerbom on how to reconstruct a local variation of the polska. The polska is the most common dance that have been for generations in Sweden. You have waltzes and such, because, of course, but polska is the thing, you know. So here is Anders Rosén and Karl Almröv playing. I hope you can hear it. Write to me if you don't. And what's happening? What happened? Hello. Okay. So here is the notations. It's a collection from the end of the 19th century, from 1890s, and he called it Springlek. Springlek is a variation of polska. I will come back to that later with the rhythm. And here you see the collector Einar Övergård. He tried to see how this music works, because it's not 1, 2, 3. It's more short 1, a longer 2, and a normal 3. You know. So, and there was also other sources to go to find out the sound of the music and the playing. Here is a recording. It will be a bit dusty because it's from 1910, and it's a fiddle player. His name was Altmos Olof Svensson. He was born 1855 in a place called Särna. It's in the woods, very close, northern part of Dalarna, and very close to Norway. So a lot of similar repertoire to Norway. So here he's playing a polska. And about the rhythm, here is my tryout to write down this music. These two variations is actually the same result. That is in 3/4. In the two first beats in this 3/4, you have a 3 against 2. You know, tak 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 tak. And then you can also divide it into 2, 4, and 3 if you take the triplets and make them to 16ths. So here is 2 16ths, here is 4, and here is 3. But it's actually the same result. Another very great inspiration source for me to listen to and how to play this older music is Josse Anders Andersson. Here he's playing together with his friend Jamtol Ersson, and they play in the style that was most common those days. Mostly you play solo, or you play duo. And when you play duo, you play in octaves. And his friend Jamtolof, he's playing on a viola tuned down 1 octave, so he can play it as the same as the violin. And here's a polska, also recorded from 1910. I go on here. Here is another one. Höök-Olof Andersson. He also from Rättvik in Dalarna. And when you see his position, he had a great mustache, but also have this kind of position playing that we also, I think Dimitri also talked about, and others, that this older style of playing that is, of course, sort of reminiscence of the Baroque music, but also that it's because this was also the common way of playing in Baroque time, but also that it was nice if you played it. It's a sort of relaxed way of playing music, but I think also it has to do with the reminiscence of the Baroque playing. And what's interesting with Höök-Olof Andersson, that is the sound of his violin, even though there is a recording from, I think, between 1913 and 1920, it's on a cylinder recording. You can hear both his intonation and also the sound of his violin. It tells you a lot about the sort of older style of the sound ideal and playing ideal. So he's playing, here is a wedding march. Or it's a ceremonial tune from weddings, when you serve the food. I will also continue to play one tune here with him. He is playing a herding call tune. I will also come back to that also when it comes to intonation and modality. So here is a herding call with Höök-Olof. So these recordings, not the first one we had listened to with Spaken, but this recording was done between 1913 and 1920 in Stockholm by this man Yngve Laurell, who was a professor in ethnography and also was working in China from 1937 to 1947. And he recorded these musicians who were playing at the outdoor museum in Stockholm called Skansen, and because the inventor, the man who started the outdoor museum, Arthur Hazelius, he wanted to have not only building but also the immaterial culture of Sweden. So he invited excellent musicians on nyckelharp and violin and so from whole part of Sweden. So it was a chance for Yngve Laurell to go there with his phonograph or cylinder machine to record these musicians. And but it took, they was published 1976, 1 year after he died. So they were published on an LP, and it was for me as a young musician then was fantastic, not only to read the music because their repertoire was published, but also to able to listen to how they sounded. And the last example of recordings, this is from the 1970s or 1960s, maybe 1960s. This man, Mats Arnberg, he was working at the radio and television, and he made a great job to actually to make recordings, field recordings, television programs. And he had a bit resistance from his bosses, because they said, why do you do this? This is so uninteresting to record these old fiddle players. And he said, yes, I have to do this because this. And he also had a very good photographer with him, and so they made this. Maybe his presentations are from that time. It's a bit romantic, but even though he made an enormous work of collecting this music. And this man here, his name is Evert Aas. His father was a school teacher, and also have made a great collection of tunes from that part of Sweden called Älvdalen. In Dalarna is the northern part of Dalarna. Älvdalen is a bit special, both not only for the music but also for the language. And it's actually one of the most ancient dialects in Sweden that has more in common with Icelandic than Swedish. So I have one of my very best friends are from this area, and when she speak, her name is Lena Willemark, she's a singer, and when she speak Älvdalens dialect, nobody understands, because it's so, it's like also the kind of time frame, it's like that was the way people spoke for hundreds of years ago, and in this area they didn't change it, so it's sort of time travel. So here he's playing a polska called Jamsken. I stopped there because I think it's more nice to see a person live and not entirely with this PDF. So what to do then? Well, I have a bridge here, you see. As I also thought there was some other pictures of the first Gaila who showed these kind of bridges. And this is a copy from a fiddle player. His name was Jöns Anders, and he lived in the 19th century in Malung, in Dalarna. And it's a bit similar to the bridge you see on this is my Hardanger fiddle. It's also flat, and it's good when if you want to play many strings and open this kind of drone style. It's good to have this one, and also tried also to play on gut strings. That actually is it's rather good because it tells you more about the limits, but also the possibilities you have in this. It gives you sort of the style of the music when you have the equipment like that. These tunes, the older tunes in this style, I don't like I prefer this violin instead of this violin. This is a modern violin that I can play more modern music, of course, but on this one it makes more sense. And then also I have this kind of bow that also kind of this also mentioned earlier, and this is my second one. I had one in the 70s. One of Leif Stinnerbom, my friend Leif Stinnerbom, and me, we got two of these bows from a fiddle player, and he was a carpenter, but I lost it. I don't know where it is. This is a copy from bows from Norway, from also 19th century, and it's this. I don't know them. I heard the name before. I don't know the name of this, but it's sort of it's easy. You do this and then you adjust, and it looks strange. Then you have it so curved like this, but actually it makes sense, and it's very light, and it fits very good to this kind of playing. And now I tune it down one, so it's tuned. This note is not A, it's G, because otherwise I have no gut strings. They break, especially that the E string doesn't like too high notes. So, and it's tuned in what we call A bass. It's the most common tuning in the old style. And then when it comes to intonation, as you heard in the examples, you have this, what Sven Ahlbeck called variable pitches. You know, you have in the scale you can number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And number 1 and number 2 and number 5 never change. Well, so if, for example, 1 is D, the third note can be low, a bit higher, quarter tone, a bit lower than major, and major. So, I mean, the differences are very small. But, for example, when you heard the wedding march or the ceremonial tune that Hökule played, it's somewhere not F or not F sharp, not F, you know, it's somewhere between. So you can have a bit lower seventh, a bit lower quarter, a bit higher, you know, so that you can, and this is very individual. You do as you want. And you can also change it during the melody, so it's not fixed that it has to be this note. It could be variable, you know. For example, I will play now a herding call melody. Maybe I could cut off this lamp so I have a Gloria. No. Anyway, so you have a melody here. First I try to play it without this alteration in the keys, in the notes. The first phrase, and then it's the second phrase, and then this tune calls, the name is Little Cow, Liten Ko. And and the first, maybe you like it's a bit higher. And this one is also nice. So therefore I make two changes there. So I go up on the da-da-da-da, I go up a bit, and then and so you can change these small pitches like coloring, you know. And then you also add the double stops, the open tunes, the open strings. And so on. There is, as we don't know, I can't ask these guys because they were dead many years, decades before, you know. So, but there is a sort of things that come again and again and again. And that is when the melody note is D and the melody note is F, for example, in D minor or F-ish, you know. So there's a melody note here and then one. But when you take them like that and then you go to the double stop, you take the F, that is the double stop note, not the melody note. You take it up to F sharp, like that. Or their melody. So I just see what time we have also for questions. Yes, I think this is there is many other things also that I have made a PDF. I will also send you. There is some clips and some other things also that, and so maybe we have some questions. No? Are you there? Yes? No. So I can show you another thing with this Scordatura is also that you have, I think you have in many cultures that you have a violin. And so because you don't play position playing. So instead of that, you can change the whole color of the instrument with Scordatura. So, for example, I do tuning. I hope it works. So tune down to G or fifth. Even if it's not tuned in G, we say G. And then I tune down the D string to C. And I hope it works. So my note number 1 is not D in this time, it's C. On the A string. So to play a scale down, I have to add the number 4 here. That is normally in A, but now sounds G. And I can make some nice double stops with my first finger. If it and I have to want to play G and B. I have to do this a bit awkward, and then oh my god. Okay, so I play a short little tune in this tuning. So then we have a whole new character of the music, and so any questions? Hello.
Yes, Mats, we are having 2 questions. One of the questions are how you can characterize the relationships between nyckelharpa and violin in traditional Swedish music?
Yes. The nyckelharpa is, or the key fiddle is the relationship. Well, they have. I think they have two different. They are related, but in two different branches, and they have one relationship you can see is that the older versions of the nyckelharpa are the medieval versions are with one melody string and two drones, and you can play a limited, like the bagpipe, a very limited range of melodies. And then you have the nyckelharpa from the 18th century that you have. It's called contrabass harpa, but it's just like you have the bass string is in the middle, and then your A string up, and then a D string down, and then you can tune this to G or D, G or A. So you have, and then you have the keys are in the first position, in the first notes on the harp. You have the same key to the bow strings, like that. But and then you alter the bow to play on the upper string or the lower string. And the sound of that, it's more like bagpipe sound. It's very harsh and fantastic and very strong, good for dancing. And then you have the 19th century that changed, so they have more keys, but the body is different. It's more like the key harp we have now, but they play in C. That's it. C. That's it. And then you have, and they have a lot of drones, and they play in C. And it's a fantastic instrument. They have, and they don't have any clips here for the bow, so they push the bow like this to have it stretch. Then you have the beginning of the 19th century, and the 1940s, when Erik Sahlström invented the modern harp. So that prevented the whole instrument to die out, because people could play in C, and the fiddle players don't like to play in C. So it almost died out. There was the big professor in musicology, Jan Ling. He made a big thesis in 1960s about the key harp, fiddle harp. And when he went out in these areas when you have this instrument, there was almost none. There was maybe 10 or 14 people playing this instrument, and it was almost dying out. And thanks to Erik Sahlström, who invented the chromatic harp. It's based on the same body as the harp is from the 19th century. It's called silverbass harp, but it's chromatic, so you can play any keys. And so maybe that is kind of relationship between this kind of fiddle, that you can play drone music, but maybe not the tunes from the more modern polkas and such. It doesn't work on this one. So you need another violin. Maybe is that a good answer? I hope.
Yes, thank you for your answer. And the second question: is there enough places in Sweden to learn traditional violin play?
Yes, you can. You can go. First, you can, of course, visit the festivals, and there will always be sort of short workshops on the festivals. Then you can also go to what we call folkhögskola. I don't know the word in English for that, but it's a kind of open school that it's not gymnasium. It's more kind of what can you say? It's a Danish invention. Fantastic kind of schools that have different workshops and different educations. And there is one in Malung, in Dalarna, that have been there for almost 40 years, I think. It's a very good education. You can have a half a year teach a class, or you can have 1 year class. There is also other places like that you can. And many young people go to these folkhögskolas before they go to the academies, because then you can have 1 year just practicing playing, and so and different places in Sweden. You have in Jämtland, they have in Birka, they have folk music. In Tomelilla here in Skåne, where I live, also have on the folkhögskola. Then you have the academies. You have where I work, for example, in Malmö Academy of Music. We have a folk or word music program. In Gothenburg, they also have a folk and world music program. In Stockholm, at the Royal College of Music in Stockholm, they have education specialized mostly for Swedish music, and also a world music program as well. And I think there, of course, you have in Arvika, in Värmland, at Ingesund, also they have a folk music education.
Thank you, Matt.